A lovely song called Laugh by Lisa Donelly.
I'm stuck at a dinner party next to a woman I don't know. Her perfume's bold as a dress. She's really old and yet she won't stop going on and on about where I'm going. She says, tell me your time and date of birth and I'll read your story in the stars. Your tangled mess will make more sense when you find out who you are. So baby, if you know what's good for you, you gotta listen to me. Sex and money make the world go round. Breathe in when you're feeling down. Speak softly but stand tall and laugh at it all. Open your heart and close your legs. They only want what makes them big. Get hurt and then do it again and laugh at it all. Then she starts to do her magic, where she sees right through my skin, all the places that you've been. And through my palm she reads my fragile heart and sees the shattered state that it's in. An angel in the making, she's not afraid to die. The ground beneath her shaking, next to her I'm more alive. She peels away my useless layers. With one look I'm new again. Sex and money make the world go round. Breathe in when you're feeling down. Speak softly but stand tall and laugh at it all. Open your heart and close your legs. They only want what makes them big. Get hurt and then do it again and laugh at it all. You can change the world if you know the world won't change. Acceptance is the answer. All walls come down the same. Sex and money make the world go round. Breathe in when you're feeling down. Speak softly but stand tall and laugh at it all. Open your heart and close your legs. They only want what makes them big. Get hurt and then do it again and laugh at it all. If you wake up feeling sad, laugh at it all. Share every bit of love you have, laugh at it all. The world will push you to your knees, laugh at it all. Fear will try to take the lead, laugh at it
Joe Rogan with Dr. Matthew Walker.
Done those studies where they've looked at sort of whether you actually physically practice, let's say on a keyboard, just because it's easier to sort of manage in a laboratory, versus just imagining sort of typing out that sequence. And just the act of physical visualization of sort of imagination of that motor skill, it's about 50% as effective as physically performing it too. And it's 50% as effective, what I mean there is, in changing the plastic connections within the brain.
Whoa.
So even just visualization, passive play, as it were, still can actually cause a rewiring of the brain beneficially.
Wow. Learning techniques, specifically martial arts techniques. My good friend Eddie Bravo, who's a world-famous jiu-jitsu instructor, he's always comparing it to tying your shoe. And he said, do you know how, like, when you were a little kid and you're trying to figure out how to tie your shoe, it's an extremely difficult thing to do. You're like, how do I do this? And you put that down and you do loops. Like, I'm watching my 7-year-old daughter go through that right now. But now, as a grown man, when I tie my shoe, I could just be talking, what? Oh, yeah, we're going to go tomorrow. And I'll do it. I don't even know what I did. If you tried to ask me to explain how I tie my shoe, I'd be like, how do I tie my shoe? Like, I don't even know how I do it because I have it in there. And the idea with martial arts is you've got to be, all of your techniques have to be automatic. Someone extends the arm, you instantly hook it and go into the arm bar. You have to have these paths like so drilled in that you don't even know you're doing them until it's over.
Yeah. So automaticity is one of the things that sleep actually accomplishes. I was talking about those 20 to 30% benefits in motor skill performance. So we did some additional studies to actually say, well, how does sleep do that? Where in your skill performance does sleep give you the benefit? So you're right, tying a shoelace, even driving a car with stick, at first it's just overwhelming. It's so difficult. It's clutch, it's gas pedal, it's gear. And now it's just second nature. It's shifted from conscious to automatic, from conscious to non-conscious. If you look at performance that is conscious and not automatic, it's usually very staccato. It's this, then it's that, then it's that. It's not fluid. If you heard someone trying to sort of play piano to begin with, it doesn't sound very fluid. As someone who is a maestro, it just flows out of them. So we looked at this with motor skill performance, again, sort of like keyboard playing, musicianship. And you learn and you learn and you get better. And let's say that you type a sequence, let's say 4-1-3-2-4. And people learn it, but they have these problem points throughout the sequence. They go 4-1-3-2-4, 4-1-3-2-4, as if there's a sticking point. It's the same thing with any skilled performance in athletics. And it's the brain chunking things up. A very long motor sequence gets chunked up into small sort of digestible bites. It's a good way to begin learning. But it's not a way to create automaticity. At some point, what you have to do is stitch all of those things together, and it just flows.
Like a sentence.
Like a sentence, yeah. Like a piano piece. Like, a sequence of movements. If you've got, in martial arts, you've got,
Yeah.
So what we found was that before sleep, you've got these big problem points, these gaps in your motor skill learning. Sleep does not necessarily improve the places where you're already good. Sleep is intelligent. It goes in, finds that problem point, that friction point in your motor skill sort of deficit, and it smooths it out so you come back the next day, and now it's just 4-1-3-2-4, 4-1-3-2-4, 4-1-3. It's automaticity, and it's exactly what you're describing. Speak to musicians, they'll say, I was playing, I just couldn't get that piece the night before, and then I came back the next day and I sat down and I could just play. Sleep's doing its work.
I've heard that too with problems, and that's why people say sleep on it.
Yeah, you've never been told to stay awake on a problem.
Yeah, it's true, right? I mean, sometimes when you're about to go to bed, it's almost overwhelming. You just can't concentrate on anything else but this problem, whatever it is. And then you go to sleep and you wake up in the morning like, it's all right.
Yeah.
It's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I got it. I know what to do.
And sleep sort of, and there's lots of anecdotal evidence of sleep-inspired creativity. And now this shifts to one of the benefits of dreaming, in fact. It's during dream sleep when we take all of the information that we've previously learned and we start to collide it with all of the new information that we've learned. It's it's a little bit like group therapy for memories. Everyone gets a name badge and you all get to speak to each other. And the brain starts to seek out and test novel connections and new associations. So it's almost like informational alchemy. And you wake up the next morning with a revised mind-wide web that is now capable of divining, incredible solutions to previously impenetrable problems. And lots of anecdotes, Dmitry Mendeleev came up with a periodic table of elements by way of dream-inspired insight. Talk about a Herculean task, take all of the elements in the known universe and figure out a structure as to how they all fit together. Off you go. His waking brain could not do it. His sleeping brain solved the problem.
Whoa.
I mean, Einstein, by the way, this is great. Einstein, was suggested to be a short sleeper, and we don't know if that's true, but even if he was a habitual napper during the day. I've got some great pictures of him on his workbench, and he used sleep ruthlessly as a tool for creativity. And he would sit at his desk and he would have a sort of pad of paper and a pencil, and he had a chair with armrests, and he would pick up 2 steel ball bearings and take a metal saucepan and turn it upside down, place it underneath the arm of the chair, and put the 2 steel ball bearings in his hand. Then he would rest back and he would start to fall asleep. And so he didn't fall too far into sleep. What would happen is at some point, his muscle tone would relax. They would release the steel ball bearings. They would crash on the saucepan, wake him up, and then he would write down all of the creative ideas that he was having. Isn't that brilliant? So no wonder, you're never told to sort of stay awake on a problem. And in every language that I've inquired about to date, French, Swahili, that phrase, sleeping on a problem, seems to exist, which must mean that this benefit of dream sleep transcends cultural boundaries. I should note, I think it's important that the French translation is much closer to you sleep with a problem. We, the British, you say you sleep on a problem. The French, you say you sleep with a problem. I think it says so much about the romantic difference between the British and the French,
the French are trying to fuck everything. They're trying to fuck their problems.
I'll lose my British passport for saying that, but that's okay.
You won't. I will, but I won't either. It's just a joke. That's fascinating that Einstein figured that out, too, that he literally had like a whole routine that he would drop this ball, would hit it, bang, and wake up and start writing. Like, imagine being in the room. I would love to be in the room watching Einstein do that. It must have been fascinating.
Oh, sorry, I said Einstein. It's Edison. My goodness. I'm an idiot. Edison.
Oh,
sorry.
That changes everything.
That's probably the rough
wasn't
night
Edison a thief, though? Didn't he steal everything from Tesla?
I think there's argument to be made. But, I mean, he has a lot to answer for, by the way, in terms of the way that we're sleeping. He was the first person to electrify society.
Right.
Not necessarily create the light bulb, but he really, shifted us from a point where now we controlled the night in terms of illumination. And we are a dark-deprived society in this modern era, and that's one of the things that is keeping us awake at night, a lack of darkness.
Yeah, not just that, but also our inability to see the stars anymore, the light pollution that we have at night. I think it's a giant shift in perspective. Like, have you ever been to a planetarium or an observatory, like one of those at night? There's a Keck Observatory in Hawaii. Is a place I try to go to every year, and it's really stunning because it's very high up. I think the observatory it's somewhere more than 9,000 feet above sea level, and then I think you go even further, and then they have the telescopes. But you go to visitor center, and you go to the visitor center, and they have some telescopes set up. But you'd actually drive through the clouds. So as you're driving up this mountain, we were bummed out. We're like, oh, it's cloudy. We might not be able to see anything. And then you drive through the clouds. And then when you get through the clouds, you're like, holy shit. and you feel like you're on a spaceship flying through space. And this is what our ancestors saw. Every night when they went to sleep with a clear sky, they saw all the stars. They saw the full Milky Way like this. And the way the Big Island has set up, they use diffused lighting all over the island because of the Keck Observatory. So you don't have the same level of light pollution that you have when you're in a normal city like Los Angeles, which is terrible. I mean, LA, if you look up, you see like 1 or 2 stars because everything's lit up. It's crazy bright. I think that perspective that's a giant factor in the way human beings look at their relationship with the universe. But I think that also just the light everywhere, constant light everywhere, that's got to be a big factor in why people sleep so little, right?
Yeah, we know it is now. I mean, these studies have been done. The first part is the external light, which is, street lighting. Even if you've got curtains, that can still bleed through.
Yeah.
But then when you come into the home, the invasion of light into the home by way of technology has been a big problem.
People looking at their phones before they go to bed.
Well, firstly, I mean, the incandescent light bulb sort of was the start of it. And light bulbs can suppress a hormone that's called melatonin. It's the hormone of darkness, and it tells your brain when it's dark and when it's time to sleep. But then you add into that screen usage, and they've done studies where, for example, 1 hour of iPad reading versus just 1 hour of reading on a book, in dim light. that 1 hour of iPad reading firstly delayed the release of this critical darkness hormone called melatonin by about 3 hours. So if you read on your iPad for an hour here in California, your melatonin peak is not going to arrive. I mean, it's somewhere in Hawaii time. In fact, it's 3 hours delayed.
Wow.
It's 50% less in terms of its peak. And furthermore, you don't get the same amount of REM sleep. And when you wake up the next morning, you don't feel as refreshed or restored by your sleep. Those studies have been done too.
Wow. What should someone do if they have a hard time sleeping? Like, say if you're a person who has insomnia, you have a hard time getting to bed, you have a hard time staying asleep. When you wake up, you can't go back to bed.
Yeah.
Are there strategies?
There are. I mean, I think for most people, there are 5 things that you can do just out the gate to get better sleep. Regularity is probably the most important thing I can tell you. Go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, no matter whether it's the weekend, weekday. Regularity is key. We've spoken about light. For example, when you, in the last hour before bed, try to stay away from screens, but also just switch off half the lights in the house. You would be surprised at how soporific that is. It really starts to sort of make you feel a bit more drowsy. They've done some great studies where they would take people out, into the Rockies, no electric light, no electricity whatsoever. And they started to go to bed 2 hours earlier than their acclaimed natural bedtime. It wasn't just because they didn't have anything necessarily to do. It was that their melatonin was rising, 2 hours earlier. So keep it dark. The third is probably keep it cool. Your brain actually needs to drop its temperature by about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate sleep. And that's the reason that you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold than too hot.
I've seen people use cold pads. Have you seen those? You sleep on these cold pads? What do you think of those?
Yeah, I mean, the evidence is pretty good that cooling the body actually works. They've, in the book, I write about a series of studies where they had people in, it's almost like a wetsuit, but it has all of these veins running through it. And they could actually perfuse warm or cold water into any part of the body, hands, core of the body, feet, and so that you could exquisitely manipulate the temperature of any part of the body. And what they found is that they could effectively cool the body down, and it instantaneously made people fall asleep faster, and it gave them deep non-REM sleep, that sort of restorative sleep for the body. So, and you can even look at studies where people sleep semi-naked, and that also seems to improve their sleep, and they get a little bit more deep sleep too. So cold is better. The paradox here, though, is that you need to warm your feet and your hands to kind of charm the blood away from your core out to the surface and radiate that heat.
Really? So you should go to sleep with socks and gloves on?
Yeah. Or better still, have a hot bath. Evidence here, too, that I discuss where people say, I get out of a hot bath, I feel nice and toasty, I'm relaxed, and that's why I fall asleep. It's the opposite. When you get into a bath, you get vasodilation. You sort of get rosy cheeks, red skin. All of the blood rushes to the surface. You get out of the bath, and you have this massive thermal dump of heat that just evacuates from the body. Your core body temperature plummets, and that's why you sleep better. So you can hack the system very easily.
Wow. So your core body temperature plummets, and that's what makes you sleep easier.
Yeah.
That sounds so counterintuitive.
Yeah.
But it makes sense.
And it makes sense because that's how we were designed. If you look at hunter-gatherer tribes whose way of life has not changed for thousands of years and you ask how do they sleep, one of the things that seems to dictate their sleep is the rise and fall of temperature. Temperature is at its lowest in the nadir of the night, 3 or 4 in the morning. And as that temperature, that climate temperature starts to drop, that's when they start to get drowsy, as if temperature is just sort of signaling to the brain, now it's time to sleep. So light as well as temperature are 2 key triggers to help you get better sleep. If you look at those tribes, by the way, and when they go to sleep and they wake up, they go to sleep probably at 2 hours after dusk, sort of 8 to 9 in the evening, wake up about half an hour, even an hour before dawn. It's the rise in temperature rather than light that triggers their awakening. Wow. But there's a reason, have you ever thought about what the term midnight actually means? middle of the night.
Right.
And that's what it should be for all of us. But in modernity, we've been dislocated from our natural rhythms. And now midnight has become the time when we think, I should check Facebook last time, I should send my last email.
Yeah.
That is not how we were, designed to sleep. And in fact, we may also be designed to sleep biphasically too. If you look at those hunter-gatherers, they don't sleep one long bout of 8 hours at night.
Yeah, I've heard this recently, that you should have 2 sleeps. The idea of 2 sleeps.
Yeah, it's actually a little different than the idea of 2 sleeps. So there was a time in sort of the Dickensian era where people would sleep for the first half of the night, maybe sort of 4 hours or so. Then they would wake up, they would socialize, they would eat, they would make love, and then they would go back and have a second sleep. If you look at natural biological rhythms in the brain and the body, that doesn't really seem to be how we were designed. It certainly seems to be something that we did in society, but I think it's more of a societal trend than it was a biological edict. However, we do seem to have 2 sleep periods the way that we were designed. Those tribes will often sleep about 6.5 hours, 7 hours of sleep at night. And then especially in the summer, they'll have that siesta-like behavior in the afternoon. And all of us have that. Sort of this, what's called the postprandial dip in alertness, just means after lunch. And if I measure your brainwave activity with electrodes, I can see a drop in your physiological alertness somewhere between 2 to 4 p.m. in the afternoon.
But is that dependent on diet?
It's not. People think it is, especially after they've had a heavy lunch.
Yeah.
You can actually just have people fast and sort of, fasting for long periods of time actually makes your sleep much worse. But you can have people abstain from lunch and you still get that drop. So it's independent of food. It's a genetically hardwired, pre-programmed drop that suggests we should be sleeping biphasically.
But is that dependent upon their standard diet? Because if someone is on a carbohydrate-rich diet, a lot of times you do get that spike and then you crash. But when people are on low-carb and high-fat diets, they don't get that, and they tend to be more even with their energy through the day?
Yeah. So yeah, that sort of more constant release of energy can actually help you sort of almost combat that lull.
But that lull exists no matter what.
Exactly.
So even if you don't think it exists, it's there.
It's still present.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So why did they do that in the Dickens era? Why did they? What is there a root cause of their double sleep thing?
We don't know. I mean, it's hard to sort of really go back.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it's incredible.
That was a trend.
Yeah, that it was a movement.
That they would just wake up and do things, and
yeah,
maybe it's because they didn't have TV. And they didn't know what to do with themselves.
Yeah. Well, sounds like they did some pretty interesting things, which were nice. But
yeah. Well, they created a lot of art then too, right? A lot of writing and a lot of fascinating stuff came out of that time. Now, when you're when you're measuring people's health, and when you're measuring people's health in regard to how much sleep they have, like how do you do that? Do you just talk to people? Do you do surveys? Like, how do you get like a detailed analysis of people's patterns?
So you can do it at many different levels. I mean, we can start at the sort of gross high level, which is epidemiological studies across millions of people, where you do surveys, you ask them about their sleep, and then you look at health outcomes. The first thing from that data that's clear is an unfortunate truth. The shorter your sleep, the shorter your life.
Whoa.
Short sleep predicts all-cause mortality.
Which is really ironic, because people that want to sleep less are like, I don't have a whole lot of time. Yeah. This life is short. Well, it's fucking shorter if you sleep less.
Yeah, that old maxim, you can sleep when you're dead.
Yeah.
Well, it's mortally unwise advice, because we know from the data you will be both dead sooner and the quality of that now shorter life will be significantly worse.
Yeah, that's counterintuitive to people. The idea that you need this, it's not just like you're making best use of time by sleeping less. You're not. You would make best use of time by being awake less.
Exactly.
Which is crazy.
I mean, wakefulness, firstly, from a brain perspective, is low-level brain damage. We know that.
Wakefulness is?
Yeah.
Low, like right now, you and I are getting low-level brain damage.
Yeah, that's right. And it's sleep that offers a reparatory function.
Wow.
And I'll give you one example, which is your risk for Alzheimer's disease. Insufficient sleep across the lifespan now seems to be one of the most significant lifestyle factors determining whether or not you'll develop Alzheimer's.
What studies, or if any, have been done on people that work the third shift?
So people have looked at shift work in general. They haven't necessarily split it down to that granular point. But what we see is that shift workers have higher rates of obesity, higher rates of diabetes, but perhaps most frighteningly, cancer. And in fact, we now know the link between a lack of sleep and cancer is quite strong. Insufficient sleep is linked to cancer of the bowel, cancer of the prostate, cancer of the breast. And the association has become so powerful that recently the World Health Organization decided to classify any form of nighttime shift work as a probable carcinogen.
Whoa.
Yeah, so jobs that may induce cancer because of a disruption of your sleep-wake rhythms.
Are there other correlating factors? Like, don't people that sleep less or work into the night, don't they eat more and eat more shitty food?
They do, both of those things.
Yeah,
and we know exactly the pathways. So there are two hormones that control your appetite and your weight. One is called leptin, the other is called ghrelin. They sound like hobbits, but they're not the real hormone, the real chemicals.
They do sound like hobbits.
Yeah, it's bizarre. But so leptin is the chemical that tells your brain you're full, you're satiated, you don't want to eat anymore. Ghrelin does the opposite. It's the hunger hormone. It says you want to eat more, you're not satisfied with your food. If I take people, and these studies have been done, we've done some of these studies too, and you just put a group of healthy people on 4 or 5 hours of sleep for, let's say, 1 week, and you look at those two hormones, they go in unfortunately opposite directions. So leptin, that says you're full, stop eating, that gets suppressed by a lack of sleep. Ghrelin, the hunger hormone, that gets ramped up. So firstly, people who are sleeping just 5 to 6 hours a night will, on average, eat somewhere between 200 to 300 extra calories each day because of their underslept state. Add that up, it's about 70,000 extra calories a year. It's about 10 to 15 pounds of obese mass each year, which for me is starting to sound familiar. But what we also know is that it's not just that when you're underslept, you eat more of the wrong things. So the great scientific work, if you give people this sort of finger buffet and they can eat whatever they want and it contains all of the different food groups, and you sleep deprive them or you give them a full 8 hours of sleep, yes, they start to overeat by somewhere around about 450 calories with total sleep deprivation. But what they go after is heavy-hitting carbohydrates and simple sugars, processed food. And they stay away from the healthy sort of leafy greens, nuts, proteins, etc. So you're not just eating more, you're eating more of the wrong things. And that's why a lack of sleep has such a strong obesogenic profile to it. And you can take a step back too and you say, well, if you look at the rise of obesity over the past 70 years, it's just this upward exponential increase. And if you plot on the same graph the amount of sleep that society is getting, it goes in the opposite direction. As sleep time has declined, obesity rates have increased. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the obesity epidemic is simply a sleep problem. It's not. It's a problem of us being sedentary, processed foods, larger food serving sizes. If you take those factors, though, by themselves, they cannot explain the increase in obesity. Other things are at play. Is sleep one of them? Now we know it is. It's a critical factor in the obesogenic epidemic.
I know from personal experience when I'm tired, I always gravitate towards the worst choices. For me, it's late night cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Wendy's at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. What happens if you get naps? Like, say if you only have 5 hours of sleep, but you take a 2-hour nap during the day. Does everything make up?
Yes and no. So what you're talking about there is what we call prophylactic napping, which is sort of strategically trying to help combat your deficiency of sleep. Naps can actually give you benefits. We've done some of these studies where they improve, your learning, your memory, your alertness, your concentration, especially your emotional regulation too. Sleep is critical for emotional first aid and mental health. However, you can't keep using naps to self-medicate sort of short sleep of, 4 or 5 hours each night. We know that the system itself, your brain, has no capacity to regain all of the sleep that it's lost. It will try to sleep back some of that debt. But what we've discovered, let's say I take you tonight, I deprive you of sleep, 8 hours lost. Then I give you all of the recovery sleep that you want on a second, third, or fourth night. You will sleep longer, but you will only get back maybe just 3 or 4 hours of that lost total 8. So sleep is not like the bank. You can't accumulate a debt and then hope to pay it off at the weekend. And so there is no credit system within the brain for sleep. You can't bank it, which is odd, by the way. I would love that system.
Yeah, then you would know what you owed.
You would know what you owed. But I could also just know when I'm going into a state of, sleep debt, and I could build up some credit. And there's precedent for this, by the way. There is a system like that in the brain. It's called the fat cell, because there were times during our evolutionary past where we faced famine and we faced feast. And so the body learned to adapt to that and said, when you have feast, store it up as caloric energy in these things called adipose cells, fat cells. And then when you go into famine, you can spend that caloric credit. Where is that in the brain? Why don't we have that? The reason is very simple. Human beings are the only species that deliberately deprive themselves of sleep for no apparent reason. In other words, Mother Nature has never faced the challenge of coming up with a safety net for a lack of sleep. We've never been forced to come up with that solution. That's why we get such demonstrable disease, sickness, and impairment when you undergo a lack of sleep.
So this is a recent occurrence in human beings? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I mean, the only time we see it in nature is when you go into conditions of starvation. The only way that you can get a species to sleep less, and it's very, very difficult to do because sleep is just so essential, is when you put them under conditions of extreme starvation. There they will forego some sleep to stay awake so that they forage in a larger sort of circumference area to try and find more food. It's probably the reason that when people go into fasting, their sleep is so terrible, because the brain is receiving this ancient trigger that you're going without food. You're in a state of starvation. You need to stay awake and hunt for food. That's why your sleep gets so much worse when you're undergoing fasting.
That's fascinating. I did not know that. So fasting is when you're talking about multiple day fasting and not intermittent fasting.
We don't know the evidence for intermittent fasting. So, if some people are doing sort of 12 hours, 14 hours, 16 hours, that doesn't seem to be extreme enough to trigger a change in sleep. But if you fast for these long periods, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, you can really see some quite marked sleep fragmentation. Sleep is, ask any of those people, they'll tell you. That's
fascinating because people always cite the health benefits of multiple day fasts. Do you think that that's just like a placebo effect?
I mean, certainly we know that there are chemical pathways that when you go into fasting are activated that seem to be beneficial for health outcomes. And there's a big literature on sort of fasting and aging with the mTOR pathway, for example. But, we also know that as a species, we were not designed to have such terrible fragmented sleep. And we spoke about how sleep regulates your appetite.
Right.
If you're trying not to eat food and sort of control and manage your weight, the last thing that you probably want to do is be shortchanging yourself on sleep, because it's only going to make you even more hungry and reach for sort of worse food. So I still think there's room for fasting in the equation, but I think those extreme fasts, and the havoc that it plays on sleep, it's still yet to be understood. You've got to be very careful with playing around with anything going beyond sensible, behavior.
So what does it? Like, what is, if you're going to fast for 2 days, what switches on that forces your body into this haphazard sleep program?
So that's where that hormone ghrelin just kicks into high gear, that hormone that is just saying, it's a starvation hormone at that point. It's not just a hunger hormone. You've gone over into starvation, and that will promote alertness. It promotes chemicals that try to keep you awake, chemicals like dopamine to sort of force you wide awake.
So it's forcing you to go hunt or gather.
That's right. Yeah.
Ah. And this is even if your body goes into a state of ketosis?
That we don't know. People have not tried to correlate sort of, the profile change in ketosis versus alterations in sleep. I actually think it would be fascinating. Maybe there's a peak where it's bad, and then you crest it, and then things get better. Does the body acclimate to that? I don't know. We've never seen the body being able to sort of re-engage with, cognitive function with a dose of sleep deprivation that keeps going. So and these studies have been done, take people and give them 2 weeks of 7
Brendan Schaub, Bryan Callen, with P. Holmes.
In what used to just be the wide open prairie of you being you. And now I saw this electric fence going, if I was like, oh, the E-Trade baby, we bought him on the black market, just something like that. Like people would always be like, where'd you get that baby? I'd want to be like, we found him on the black market.
Yeah.
Yeah, $20 in a pack of Cools.
And that's you, though. You know what I'm saying? Like,
then I was like, oh, I'll lose this much money if I say that.
I
This
know.
is the Affleck thing.
I know.
Affleck!
Yeah.
But you know what I'm saying? You get what I'm saying.
There's
I get what
the
you're saying,
symptom.
100%.
The symptom of that, though, is assuming that you are like a human being is comprised entirely of words. The notion that I define you only on what you say, which is the most preposterous thing in the world. So think about how strong language is in college campuses now and how politically correct we are. If you say something, we are judging everybody by what they say, not what they do, not how they behave. There are so many different forms of human expression, not just with fucking language. Just think about music. Think about painting. Think about pottery. Think about all the things that we express ourselves with.
Those don't
our
offend
body
people, though.
language. But what I'm saying is that you cannot
You haven't seen
say
Greek
that's
pottery.
who you are just based on what you say all the time. Words have too much power, I think.
I understand,
They define too
but
much.
also holding people to something really strict. Like you say something, like you say cocksucker because you're Alec Baldwin and you're in a rage. We just go, well, that's a fact. Let's seal it. Like, you know,
Let's seal it.
Let's seal it and
That's
preserve
him.
it. This
That's
happened.
him.
When we all
almost
know
brand them.
Yes.
that the words are
It is what they
metaphors
do.
for what's really going on inside of us, and sometimes we fail. I offend myself all the time, maybe every day. Like someone will cut me off and I'll be like, fuck you, bitch. I'm not fuck you, bitch. Where was that?
Right.
But when we're on the record, that's when we get in trouble. And when we can police each other, and we do.
But we're always on
start
the
to get in
record. Like, to
trouble.
your point, we're always on the record.
That's why I
because-
have all my recorded conversations.
Well,
I'm
with
just deep
Instagram,
diving in.
social media, anything. I mean, yeah, you look at any celebrity now. Like,
But
they
then-
can't do anything because back in the day, let's take Michael Jordan, most famous athlete in the world. He was a
Great suit.
scumbag.
It's dull.
Now,
It's
if there's
dull.
social media, he's not able to get away with most of that.
Right.
People are filming it. They're doing all this other stuff.
I would say it goes both ways. One, your social media presence tells people who you are, and then
True.
they start to
Gives us a
hold you to
voice.
that.
Yeah.
But almost in a bad way. It's like, I'm this. I like Coke and not Pepsi, and I say cocksucker or I don't say cocksucker or whatever it is. So you're presenting this image who isn't really you.
It's
Because
6 seconds of your day.
We know the dark swirl of confusion and mystery that it is, that you're stuck inside. And you're driving with your girlfriend and you feel a dark purple and like a coldness. And you're like, I'm hungry. You're just like, you don't know. We're doing your best to give voice to the confusion that is you. It's not always so solid. So your Instagram and your Facebook tells people who you are. But then more dangerously, it starts to tell you who you are. You start to believe it. You know what I'm saying? It's like when you see a comedian start to slip into their persona all the time because their fans keep coming up and like they go up to Rogan and is like, "You're gonna punch me in the face? Give me some alpha brain." And Joe's just like, "I guess that's who I am."
Yeah.
When we know that Joe quietly weeps when he reads Charlotte's Web, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? That there's all these. I don't know Joe
Yeah,
that
it's
well.
hilarious.
quietly weeps.
It's hilarious.
But we need a society that has room for compassion and aggression, and we need room to be wrong.
But you're talking about
to
being
your point,
honest.
We need room to be wrong.
to
I'm
your-
wrong all the time.
Me too. But the thing is, I don't care. I don't
like that,
care.
yeah, sure.
I just don't care.
Yeah, but you could rip most
I don't
people in
care if I'm
half.
wrong. Like, I make so many mistakes. I'm on record saying shit all
you know
the
what,
time.
you would if
and
you were
I'm-
a college
I'm-
professor
I'm going
or
to get judged. I'm not.
But
So
if
I'm allowed to do this.
I'm saying that most people have to live in a reality where they live.
They do, which is a problem.
Yeah, they have
but
to
what
answer
I'm
human
to your
resources.
point, where you're saying people, they with their social media, Instagram, they become that person. That comedian becomes that bit.
Yeah.
We've had comedians come on here and they only do their bit. They only we're trying to have serious conversations, and they have a hat on with a light, and they're doing bits. And I'm like, it's like, bro,
I know what you mean.
You're not doing a spot at the Comedy Store.
We've lost
We're
you.
here to have a conversation.
It would be-
but that's all they identify with, and they
Right.
have nothing else to offer.
It would be like if all you did was talk about bench pressing or
Yes,
karate kicks.
correct.
I don't know, and you haven't said that once. In fact,
yeah.
First of all,
if
it's
anything,
pronounced karate.
karate.
No,
if all you did
he
was
will
karate,
though.
guys.
He will, and I shut down.
I'm the guy
usually.
who does
Yeah,
that.
I'll
That's so
shut down.
funny.
That's
usually.
my job.
But we're running out of room to be wrong, and that I think that's a problem. And one
It
of the
depends what
things-
field you're in, right? Because I think the best thing, I had this meeting the other day, and the best thing they said, it was this network, and they go, we don't have a huge budget, What we do have is we give the talent their creative freedom. Where you want to do this, we're not going to have a producer in here. We're not going to have note cards. You do your thing. That's what makes you special. That's what we're known for.
Yeah.
I was like, that's it, man. Yeah. That's the key.
That's
the
awesome.
fucking key.
Who was that? You can't say.
Yeah, I'll tell you off air for sure. Yeah.
HBO does a good job of that.
HBO definitely does do a good job,
That's what they
and
built
a
their
lot of
name
the online, and that's what podcasts are.
Yeah.
I think there's something
Correct.
powerful going on in podcasts.
Me too.
Is 3 men or women, or I just mean 3 people. Oh God,
You're just saying, no, you're just saying,
Gender mania.
you're saying right now. How dare
I'm
you,
saying,
sexist?
Right, men. 3. Okay, I'll give you an example.
3 men with
my
cocks.
podcast came out today, and it was Kevin Pollak. If you're listening, it came out Wednesday, whenever this releases. And there was a moment where Michael Clark Duncan, Michael Clark Duncan from the Green Mile and
Who
stuff.
passed away.
He passed
He
away.
did jiu-jitsu, yeah, same instructor.
Did
Yeah,
he
I know
really?
Yeah.
That dude fought.
They asked. No, he didn't fight. He just trained in jiu-jitsu.
So strong.
They asked me to do.
What is like a discipline?
Yeah. He would just do it to stay in shape, and he loved it. And he trained with Henner and Huron. And they asked me to come roll with him the week or 2 before he died. But I.
Oh my God!
When
Imagine
he got a
if you had-
smoothie and was late.
Was he
so I didn't
good?
go.
Do you know? Or
It doesn't matter. Passed away.
He's one of those dudes
What
that
else?
could just
but I'm
like on your head.
No, he really didn't train a lot.
Oh, he didn't train a
No,
lot.
no.
He seems like
he
he's
was just getting into it.
so
But
strong.
what you're saying?
Well,
about-
I confused him. I was like, wasn't he in Pulp Fiction? And then someone was like, no, that's Ving Rhames.
And that's racist.
And then and they did, because it's Kevin Pollak, that's what we did. We were like, and I go, shit, we have to edit that out. And then he goes, why? You made a mistake. And I was like, it's a thing. Like, you don't want to look like you can't tell black people apart. And we had this whole conversation. We ended up leaving it in. Why?
for sure leave it in.
Because, but I've done worse than that. I've said terms that I didn't know were offensive to people. I've offended people. And the purpose is, this isn't a fucking Crest commercial.
No.
You guys aren't making, it's like De Niro, we're not selling cars here. You know what I mean? It's like, we're not here to lie. And the truth of the human expression, one of the beautiful things about comedians and podcasts and artists in general, is that they have an allowance for error and being wrong.
of course.
Especially in this arena.
So I was wrong. So
this is a
consume
conversation.
It.
Of course.
Eat all of me. I don't need to be loved or consumed just as excellent and perfect. If I were, I'd be Bill Clinton. I'd just be like, just look at me, or whoever, whatever
Yeah,
politician.
yeah.
I want to be seen and loved as a full person, and you leave the mistake.
at Bill Burr.
But
Bill
if you
Burr's done a great
made
job
them
of that.
Bill Burr's a great example.
But if you made the mistake of saying, two white guys, like, oh, isn't that
I'm with
Bryan
you.
Callen? Like, no, that's not Bryan Callen. That's this guy.
And that's
like,
ultimate-
fuck.
that's-
all white people look the same, and we'd all laugh. and
That's
blah, blah, blah.
ultimately why I kept it in, because I think people can tell your intent, and that was a big part of our conversation too. What was your intent? Was I making some sort of joke? Isn't that the guy from Green Mile and Pulp Fiction? Like an
Yeah.
asshole? I made a mistake. And we can't just clump everything into racism, just like we can't
Well,
clump
it's not honest.
Alec
Because
Baldwin, who's what, 70?
Yeah.
Using cocksucker?
It's not an honest. They're not being honest.
Right.
The media, especially, I'm sorry, but the liberal progressive media is not honest. I don't think the right wing media is very honest, but I certainly think that they tend to be very tyrannical. I have noticed that liberal progressives in this town and in New York are very nice people as long as you agree with them. And the minute you disagree with them, the minute you express, the God, I've had these real arguments on my other podcast with academics, smart guys. Their God is equality. Equality is everything, right? I mean, in other words, that's the God that they pray to. They're fundamentalists for equality. And by the way, equality must be enforced. Equality must be socially engineered, artificially engineered at all costs. And usually that means let's bring the people that are in power down. We won't look at how hard they work or that they put wealth into the system.
They want it
that
all
doesn't
equal?
count. We want it all equal. Got to make sure it's all equal. And Jordan Peterson, who we talked about on Joe Rogan's podcast as a professor, said the point of hard work and development skills, that you get out of the equation of equality, that you rise above equality, that you're better than most people, so you can enjoy the rewards of being better and elite. Kanye West is very wealthy because he's very good. He's very unequal, very good at what he does with music. He does it better than most people for 1,000 reasons. Call it talent, call it a lot of other things, hard work. For sure, it's always on his mind. The people we admire are those people that sort of strive out of this notion.
The outliers.
Equality of opportunity, of course. Not basing somebody, dismissing somebody before you've seen what they are based on their color, creed, or their belief system, of course. Who the fuck doesn't agree with that?
The big thing with that, it was the pronouns. You know how there's this huge kind of movement now where it's his, hers, they, them,
Z now,
X,
Zer.
Y. It's not fair if someone gets offended. No one's ever sat me down like, here, Brendan, here's the new thing. This is what you need to know. If you're like, no one, there's no class. I can't turn on the TV. How am I supposed to know? So we're just supposed to take it on our own terms and try to figure this out.
It's interesting. What I hear you guys say,
like Caitlyn Jenner,
with something like that, I understand.
With Caitlyn Jenner, they're just like, nope, you're used to Bruce. It's Caitlyn now. Accept him. Like, but
well, that's why when
but wait.
somebody like Bill Burr has a very funny Caitlyn Jenner bit, which is not politically correct, and Artie Lang has a very funny one that I've seen. These are
Rogan
giving
has a good one,
expression to what you guys are talking about. And this sounds like a judgment, but it is kind of ego stuff. It's like, I'm better, I've achieved, and I'm agreeing with you. There's room for that. That's aggression. Then this is why we need both.
We need both.
You're saying liberals. I don't even.
No, I'm saying that if you were, for example, Caitlyn Jenner, if you want to be a woman, I'm not going to ever ridicule you. If you're a man, you felt like a woman your whole life, you get an operation, you want me to call you she, and you change your name. We've had transgender people on our
Beck?
Yes, we get it.
Navy
And
SEAL.
I would defend that person to express themselves, and I would never in a million years want to strip them of their dignity, make them feel less than. They've already been through that.
Mm-hmm.
The suicide rate among transgender teens is astronomical. They feel they don't have anywhere to be. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
I sympathize with that. But please don't force your agenda on me and then tell me that
I guess you're saying don't act like it's not a period of adjustment for you who might not be familiar with it.
Yes.
This is why I'm saying it's not an agenda as much as it's assuming that someone's going to have not just deep empathy but active compassion for understanding. I have a trans friend, and when she was undergoing her transition, I called her a him because I hadn't even seen her. See, as I'm struggling, I hadn't seen her since she had transitioned. So I said, "Is he here?" And then when I saw her, she was crying because she had heard me. That's completely understandable. What we're saying here is the middle way. We can't assume everyone's going to be a master at not offending anybody right away. We can't assume that winning and losing is equal. That's like aggressive compassion to the point that it's distasteful to you.
To the point where it's tyrannical.
But you can't have too much aggression either. You need to have that space where you said so beautifully what you just said about the trans community, as well as an allowance for what we're talking about, being wrong. I fucked up. I said I upset you.
You didn't mean to, though.
I did. Well, what was my intent, right? Yeah. But then I appropriately take that middle way. I don't go aggressive and go, fuck you, I didn't know, I barely know you. You should be happy I even know you were trans. That's bullshit. Or too much like, I'm going to kill myself, because we need to be in the middle and say, I didn't know.
Or they can take
apologize.
responsibility too and go, they can take responsibility for the fact that they made a major adjustment and people are going to fuck up once in a while. And she or he or whoever this person is should lighten up.
That's not fair though, B, because you don't know what it's like to be trapped inside a woman's body if you've always felt like a man.
I sure don't.
So when they're going through all this, and let's say he's a really good friend.
You just said it. Hold on. Pause there. I don't know what it's like.
I know.
So
you should be more understanding.
A little compassion. She should be a little more compassionate.
I disagree. It's fine, but it doesn't hurt your feelings if she gets upset.
No. But you remember something. I am being, and we are being persecuted by a very small minority.
Who's being persecuted?
Okay. Well, I'll give you an example. It's a
Talk
major
about campuses
problem.
and shit?
Oh, let me go. Well, I'm glad you asked.
How's Bryan Callen being persecuted?
I'll tell you, in New York and in Canada, it is a law now. There are laws, statutory laws in the books, provincial laws in the books that enforce you using certain pronouns. Jordan Peterson, the whole point of his protest is that you are telling me if I don't use Z, Zer, or whatever pronoun you want, I am a hate criminal. I can be persecuted as a hate criminal. Think about this. These are laws on the books, and certain areas in New York, as Jordan Peterson eloquently explains, this is the case. Now, what's the problem with that? When you are working in a corporation and you have people like this who are pushing this agenda in the human resources department, and you could be branded with hate speech and penalized and sanctioned and censored for hate speech if you don't use the proper pronoun. this is where we are getting into. Well, first of all, it's
I just said, how does it
anti-constitutional.
affect Bryan Callen, though?
It's affecting me, and it could affect you easily in your workspace. It is affecting people. It is affecting people, Brendan. It is a law.
I said you and me, brother.
Well, this is not the point of you and me. Right now, it's
That
not
was
affecting
my
us.
question.
Hold on. Right now, it's not affecting us, but it's affecting people, everyday citizens. It's affecting the workplace. It's affecting our society as a whole,
If you're in a
which means it
workplace,
does.
you do get the heads up. I'm not talking about what
Correct.
happened to
You
me
get
walking
knowledge.
into
It's
an
a law
office.
in Canada, guys. It's a law. Now, that law it'd be unconstitutional in this country, but there are plenty of forces pushing for this kind of
But what I'm
not
saying
law,
is,
it's
if it's a
media.
law, it seems to me like you can't marshal if I walk into a bar and make the wrong call. If I call you a woman because you have your hood up and you were wearing lipstick because of something on the Goldbergs that day,
Yeah.
that's not a thing. But if we do work in an office and there's a woman that I know is trans, I think there's something valuable
That's fair.
to educating and saying, hey,
I agree.
this is a woman, this is a she.
I think Brian has an issue if it gets labeled a hate crime if you don't understand it. But this is the difference. Let's say we work in an office together and you go through this transition and you feel like you're a woman trapped in a man's body. You make the changes. And I say, what's up, bro? And you go, dude, I get it. Listen, I don't feel like that. Can you refer to me as her, Z, whatever? And I go, no problem. Next year, what the fuck's up, bro? Like, all right, man, come on. How many times do I have to tell you? And did you read the fucking memo for God's sake?
I have a memo.
I have a memo.
But do we need a memo? But
You
see,
do
what I'm
need a
saying is
memo,
that, do we
'cause
need a
confusing.
memo?
Memo.
Hold on. But what I'm saying is that as human beings, you and I most of the people we know in that situation, because most of us aren't assholes, right? You're always going to have a couple assholes in the office. Most of us would be like, I got it. Call her he, she, or whatever. I would do that. I
not a
have
big
done
problem.
that.
Shouldn't
I
be
have
an
done-
issue.
No, of course it's not. I don't need you to make it a law. I don't need you to, I don't need you to write it into scripture or into legislation. I think this is where we get.
Why is there a need to make it a law? Again, we are three non-trans people discussing
Three
this.
privileged white males.
Exactly.
No, hold it.
But
I hate that. Wait.
Hold
I hate when
on.
people
We
say that,
can
though.
talk about how
Okay.
we hate that later. It's why did there arise a need for
Why
this
did it get
law?
to that level?
It must have been there aren't enough compassionate people. There are too many knuckleheads that don't take the bro note on the first, second, or third time. And when you say you don't know what it's like to be a woman trapped in a man's body, I would argue there are, while we don't know that firsthand, there are certain things that, for better or worse, that trigger us, that really a simple word might be the F word, the FAG word, you know what I mean? Or the N word is certainly one of them. But there's words and things for you, I'm sure, that psychologically, for better or worse, drag us down completely. I don't want to say inappropriately, but like way more than the person saying it
So what?
might have known.
So what? My issue with that is, again, there's a reason that those words that you just, the F word and the N word, there's a reason those words are already not illegal in this country and shouldn't be.
But you can't
They might
say,
be offensive.
but you can't
They
say
might be
it in the
offensive.
office structure.
No. And I
true.
would.
You
but-
get fired.
But you know why I wouldn't
That's
say it
that'd be a
anyway?
law.
You know why I don't use the word fag anymore or faggot? You know why? Because when I was in, I never used the N word because I didn't want to make somebody feel badly, and I happen to know that there's a lot of violence attached to that word. Okay. So the reason I stopped using, I remember using fag was always something you're like, it's faggy shirt. This is fag. You're a fag. When I had a gay man explain to me that word was used when his buddy was getting his head kicked in, or when I heard him describe he said, a faggot was always something that was a bundle of sticks, and they used to burn gay men over a bundle of sticks. Whether that's true or not, when I heard that shit, and a gay man made it, like a human being who I looked up to as my teacher, explained to me, and he said that was used to hurt people like me. I went, fuck, man, I can't use that
So
word
you
anymore.
had a moment of conversion from a personal experience.
That's right.
The problem, though, just to argue the other side,
Yeah.
is we can't wait for every knucklehead in an office
Yes,
to
you
have
can't.
a first-hand personal experience while people are being traumatized
No, but
and hurt.
Pete, but you change hearts and minds. But the way you change hearts and minds is not with some law.
That's what laws are. You'd like to steal. It's like a gateway to morality. The government is trying, and maybe not.
Honey, Honey on Joe Rogan.
And judging you. Just kidding, we're not. We accept you.
fire's coming down. Right into your walls, right out of your mouth. Everything you love just ash on the ground. Ooh, babe, so what you gonna do now? So you run to the river, you run to the sea. You sift through the rubble and search the debris. But you won't find anything if you don't find peace. Ooh, babe, so what you gonna do now? Don't wait until you die, 'cause you can always change your mind, make it right. So why you still waiting outside? Maybe your mama didn't treat you right. Maybe you just didn't sleep last night. You know I don't give a damn why you wanna fight. Ooh, babe, so what you gonna do now? 'Cause I'll be down that door you locked in your chest. You swallowed the key and threw out the gas. And I'm standing here where everyone left. Ooh, babe, so what you gonna do now? Don't wait until you die, 'cause you can always change your mind, make it right. So why you still waiting outside? Come out from the weeds and into my arms. Ooh, babe, I know the dark and how it can harm you. Yeah, now that my conscience ripped me apart too. So here's what we're gonna do now. Take all your needs and all your sins, and all of the losses you threw to the wind, and we'll carry the weight if it breaks every limb. Oh, and that's what we're gonna do now. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do now.
Joe Coy, Bert Kreischer.
And your family, and I don't want to go over I don't want to redo the W2F. Everyone should go hear that. One of the things that fucking blew me away is that your mom created the Filipino community in where you grew up.
Yeah.
And that it's like to see where we are today with you see like Hassan Minaj in his new Netflix show is kind of calling out the Asian community and going like, be better. I think that's a really like fucking insane leap to where your mom was when she got here and was like, oh, it's time for us to become like I need to create a community.
And she did.
That's fucking.
There were no Filipino restaurants. Like it's so hard to tell somebody else that's not of an immigrant household, especially during that time too. Like no one knows about the 80s unless you were from the 80s. Like we didn't have Facebook, MySpace, cell phones. We had landlines. You know what I mean? We had word of mouth. And my mom had to really find her friends. You know, she didn't have Facebook. Imagine being an immigrant woman that, you know, broken English.
72?
She's 71.
No, when she got here was 70.
Oh, when she got here was 70. 71 is when she came to the States. And then,
But just imagine that, you know what I mean? I got to find
it's
friends.
hard to wrap your head around.
I got to find friends, you know what I mean? And then you got to find, and then, you know, me trying to do the jokes to make it relatable and funny, but like, she was literally walking up to Mexicans, Filipino, you know what I mean? Like, seriously. And taking stabs in the dark. And then literally she slowly built this community. And then, I love Filipino food. Where can I go? There is none.
None.
So then she would rent out this place. It was called the Knights of Columbus Hall, which was attached to like this church. And every Sunday we'd go, you know what I mean? And it was like our community. My mom and dad was divorced. And that's why I always talk about my mom and that side of the family so much, because my dad kind of just left. So all I know is the Filipino culture. All I know is the Knights of Columbus Hall. All I know is like my sister always sang, and I performed Michael Jackson all the time. And that's what happened. That's when we got to eat everybody's food. You know what I mean? Because when you're broke, your mom can only make spaghetti or only make one dish, but you want to try the other dishes.
Yeah.
So then you have these potluck nights, and it was just like, you don't even understand. It was like heaven for us every weekend.
That really kind of blew me away that people, I think nowadays it's so easy to imagine finding your community online.
Yeah.
Like if you're into, like my daughters are into comic books, and it's very easy to go to the comic book store and know where it is. Get on your phone, where's the comic book store? Before that, and your mom was confronted with racism.
Yep, big time. I remember when we won a TV in JCPenney, because we sat there. My sister filled out like 1,000 cards. My mom filled out 1,000 cards. We stuck it in that little turning wheel thing, and we waited. They said 4 o'clock they were going to do it. We filled, man, that thing, at least 75% was our cards. And I think everybody knew, you know what I mean? But we needed that TV, man. And we won. And I remember we were going up the escalator, and my mom, she, every time she see kids, she always wants to touch a kid. And she was like, hi. She touched this little kid. She goes, hi, like that. And he grabbed his eyes and pulled him back. And he went, and went like that. And I was like the same age as that kid. And I looked at my mom and I was like, what? I didn't get it. She's like, oh, don't worry. He's just being funny. Like, she was protecting the kid. You know what I mean? But like, we don't know that now. You know what I mean? Like, it's still there, but not how it was back then, man.
It was
thick and heavy, man. We just came off of the Vietnam War. We had a lot of these vets coming back that were all of a sudden married with children. My dad being one, Tiger Woods being one. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was a different time. Like on the base, Bert, I don't mean to take over, man.
No. Dude,
on the base,
this podcast is better when you take over.
But on the base, we were a community. You know what I mean? Half-breeds were a race on the base.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We loved each other. Dude, black kid with hazel eyes and slightly pulled back a little. You don't look black, but I know you're black. I know your dad's black. Is your mom Korean? Yeah, she's Korean. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
My mom's Filipino. My dad's white. I got green eyes, but look at me. You don't know what the fuck I am. And that was on the base. But when we went to the mall, it was a completely different ballgame. We were looked at weird. You know what I mean? You go to Tacoma. You got Fort Lewis. You got McCord, I think it is, and you got all these military people. You know what I mean? And then they always want to go off base to go hang out. And when we went out, that's when people were like, "What the fuck are you? Like, what is this, man? What are you, dude? I don't get it."
Yeah, because back then those areas were just so fucking white.
Yeah, very. And Tacoma, white.
All ethnicity, all diversity was brought in by the military bases almost.
Yeah.
Almost exclusively back then.
Yes. That's why I had to deal with racism within my own family. That's why when people ask me, like, why don't you ever talk about your dad? I'm like, do you really want me to go there?
Yeah.
Do you really want to go there where my dad adopts 2 Asian kids because the woman that, he's married to now that he has a child with also had 2 other kids that he kind of probably didn't know about from another man that's Asian. You know what I mean? And now we go to the States and now you got this white family called the Herberts. That's my dad's real name.
Oh,
Herbert,
really?
John Charles Herbert. And, you got these 2, very white grandparents that are only giving me gifts. You know what I mean? And my mom's like, fuck that. And that's where the divorce happened.
Yeah.
And that's when that split happened. And that's when my dad kind of vanished. You know what I mean? He'll never admit it, but we all know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know what the fuck was going on. I told my dad that. I was like, I feel bad because I tell my son, I tell my dad, like, I get it, you know what I mean? But I don't want my son to ever feel the way I felt. Like, I didn't know my grandfather. When he died, I was just like, I feel bad for your dad. I said, your dad to my dad. Because I never had a grandfather on that side.
Yeah.
And then when his grandmother passed, I was like, I pray for your mother. Like, there was no identity. There's nothing. I have nothing to attach.
You had no relationship with your grandparents?
Yeah, and my dad cries all the time, man. And here's another thing: I'm not shitting on my dad.
Yeah,
it's just, how would I react at that age? 27 years old. How would you react? 27, you got a brand new wife with a kid, and then all of a sudden you have to adopt 2 other kids that aren't yours. Like, how would you react? You know what I mean? You'd probably leave too.
At 45, I think I'd be uncomfortable with it.
Exactly.
It would be. It's hard to put.
You can't wear those shoes. And I respect my dad now because he came around and he came back into our lives. He came back into my life when I was like 20, 21. And when he found out I was trying to be a comedian. Oh, fuck. It was gung ho, dude. He paid for my website.
Really?
Back when no one was buying websites, man. I remember my dad maxed out a credit card for $5,000, like in 1990. Whatever websites were starting, you know what I mean? It was like 90, whatever it was. I just remember website is, you got to have a website, Dad.
99.
Was it 99?
99 is when, I think I started stand-up when I was 26. That's 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. So that's 90, it would be 99. Yeah, 99. I remember David J. Nash had a website. Dane Cook just got a website. That was like fucking, and I remember this guy, David J. Nash, told me, don't tell anyone I got a website.
Oh, really?
But trust me, this is the thing.
I told my dad, I go, Dad, I need this money right now. And this guy was about to build it for me. This is back when everyone was hacking people for money. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the guy was like, yeah, I need $5,000 to get it started. And I begged my dad. I was like, man, you want to make up for all those missing child support payments? Now's the day. And he did it.
You can cut out the middleman and go straight to me.
Let's go, bro. It's go time.
Where was your dad? Was your dad living?
He moved to Phoenix.
He moved to Phoenix.
Moved to Phoenix.
How did you
85.
guys? How did you guys get from upstate Washington to go like there down to Vegas?
Vegas. Well, once my mom and dad divorced, it was like, that's when it was all about like the Filipino side.
Yeah.
And that just grew stronger. So
do you feel more Filipino or more white?
Yeah, that's my identity.
Your identity's Filipino.
That's why I talk about it so much.
Yeah.
Because that's all I had. I performed every Christmas, every Easter at the Filipino Association. The FASA is what they called it. And that's all I knew. All I ate was Filipino food. All I did was, my aunt named me Jokoy. That's not even my real name. Like, she calls me Jokoy. That's what she calls me.
Really?
And I remember when I was performing in Vegas, like every MC would always make fun of Joseph Herbert. You know what I mean? Like, oh, Herbert's coming. Oh, Sherbert, A-Bear.
Yeah.
Pervert. Like, people would yell out. It was just dumb. But that's what you do when you first start.
Yeah.
And then I remember telling Mona, my cousin, I was just like, I don't even know what name to go up by. I don't want to go up by Herbert anymore. It's fucking with my time. And then my aunt was like, Jokoy, eat. And I swear to God, it was like a TV moment where we both look at each other and go, Jokoy. That's the name. And that's how I got the name.
That's fucking fascinating. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's the whole time I've been thinking your mom's last name is Coy.
Yeah, everyone does. I hate it when I get interviewed by like Filipino reporters and they go, and Coy means funny guy in the Philippines. I'm like, no, it doesn't. You just made that shit up. There's nothing creative with my fucking name. My auntie Evelyn gives everybody nicknames. She can't call anyone by their fucking real name.
Yeah.
So it's like my cousin Mona, she calls her Gay, Mona Gay. Or sometimes she'll just leave Mona out and call her Gay. Yeah. And then my auntie Lynn, she called Langoy. She loved to put oys at the end. So Langoy. My auntie Belle, Annabelle, she calls her Bang or Tita Bang or Bang Bang. What the fuck is that? And then Joe is Jokoy. Like, it's just, those are all our nicknames.
Tony Woods used to give nicknames to everyone he met. My buddy Tony Hernandez, who owns Jack's Media out of New York, one of the biggest production companies in comedy. He used to call him Tony Eyebrows, and I love that nickname because he's got strong eyebrows.
Yeah.
Oh, where's Tony Eyebrows tonight?
That's great, man.
So how long did you guys stay in
Washington?
Yeah.
So we stayed in Washington until I graduated, 89. And I moved to Vegas because my grandmother had cancer. Yeah. So we all moved to be with my grandmother. And you know the crazy thing, Bert, is my mom was struggling with dating, man. She just a bunch of assholes were coming in and out of her life. And then this guy, Sergeant Fred Harrison, he came into my mom's life and it was a wrap, dude. He took over that household, and I loved it, dude. He played sports. He talked sports. My dad doesn't play sports. My dad doesn't talk sports. And this is my dude, man. I was a Seahawks fan. I was a Mariners fan. I was a Sonics fan. And he knew all about that shit, man. He was a war vet. He had 2 Purple Hearts, 2 Bronze Stars. He has a CIB badge. Motherfucker, he's missing his whole collarbone. You know what I mean? He's got a sniper shot him in the back of his right shoulder. He's got the size of a dime as the entry wound. And then the whole front part is just blasted the fuck out, and he slumps over.
Honey on Joe Rogan.
Oh God of love, if there is one, you got me pinned. So I tap your arm and I slap the floor. I try to tag out, but I got no team. Makes me sad, I don't, and I'm the jealous kind, and I don't need to prove it to you. Yeah, I can be an angry woman, I can look right through you. But what do I have to do? Get on my hands and knees. What do I have to do? Bow a rosary. Oh, what do you need from me? Oh, won't you tell me, please? Oh, God of love, make me a fine prince. Won't you lock me down, savage my innocence? Give me hands to hold, give me skin to taste, give him my hips to throw, and I'll give him my time to waste, and I'll do you right, and I'll praise your name, yeah, and I'll pay your tab, even though you drive me crazy. Oh, what do I have to do? Get on my hands and knees. What do I have to do? Bow a rosary. Oh, what do you need from me? Oh, won't you tell me, please?
There it is, right?
Okay, yeah. Turning lovers into enemies. Oh, even scores. Could I ever ask for more? And is what I got what I've been waiting for? 'Cause I feel confused, feel like a train wreck, like all the flowers died, and it ain't winter yet. And I'm the quiet kind, and I'm a solemn soul. So won't you help me stand and pay my toll? Oh, what I have to do? Get on my hands and knees. What I have to do? Bow a rosary. Oh, what do you need from me? Won't you tell me, please? Won't you tell me, please?
That was awesome.
That wasn't a bummer at all. That was awesome.
Yeah.
Dude,
man.
that was awesome.
Got into that.
How about the Ballad of Buck Angel? Have you guys talked about that? Somebody